you so much. Well, good morning, and I'm very happy to be here. I did indeed spend a year trying to figure out if I took the time and did all the things that I really thought I ought to do, could I actually make myself happier? And I wanted to do it within the confines of my ordinary day, just in my regular routine, because extra time, extra energy, extra money was in short supply. I really wanted to see if I could just do it within my ordinary day. So today I'm going to talk about a few of the threshold questions about happiness that I thought about, and I'm also going to throw out some ideas for resolutions that you might consider if you want to start working on your own happiness tomorrow morning. So one of the first questions about happiness is, what is happiness anyway? And it turns out that happiness is a surprisingly elusive concept. There are something like 15 academic definitions of happiness. And finally, I decided that it wasn't important to me to have a final, perfect, definite definition, and that the very looseness of the term was good, because some people's concept of happiness is more about joy, some is more about serenity, others is about satisfaction, but the concept was big enough for all of us. And then the next question is, well, can you make yourself happier? Can you do anything about it? And research suggests that about 30 to 50% of happiness is genetically determined. Some people are born Tiggers, some people are born Eeyores, and we've all seen that. Then about 10 to 20% of happiness is life circumstances. That's things like age, occupation, health, marital status. And then all the rest is very much influenced by the way that we think and the way that we act. And that's where a happiness project can really come into play. But the third threshold question about happiness is a much more profound question. And that's the question of whether it's selfish to want to be happier. And this concern comes in two forms. The first is to think, I have all the elements of a happy life. If I'm not happy, or if I want to be happier, I must be a spoiled brat. And the second concern is to think, in a world so full of suffering, it's not morally appropriate to seek to be happier. But research shows, and I think common experience bears this out, that happy people make people happy. Happy people volunteer more. They give away more money. They're more likely to help out, say if a colleague is overworked. They have stronger relationships with their friends, their families, their colleagues. They're healthier, and they have healthier habits. They're better team members and also better leaders. When we're happy, we have the emotional wherewithal to turn outward and to think about the problems of other people and the pain of the world. And when we're less happy, we tend to become defensive, isolated, and preoccupied with our own problems. So if it's selfish to want to be happy, you should be selfish, if only for selfless reasons. So having passed those threshold questions, then you've said to yourself, okay, well, what could you do? What could you do tomorrow morning to try to make yourself happier? What are some concrete, specific resolutions that you could try? And I'm going to throw out some things here, and these are very basic things, not complicated because of where we are right now, but I just want to give you some quick ideas of things that you might think about yourself. And the first place to start, because happiness can feel very transcendent and complicated, a great place to start is with your own body, because your physical experience always influences your emotional experience. And the first thing I'm going to say sounds so basic as to almost be laughable, but I think everybody here will hear me on this, which is that you have to get enough sleep. So many people that I talk to feel overwhelmed and listless and this and that, and then it turns out they're getting 5 hours of sleep a night. And the thing about sleep is that people think that they've adjusted to it. They say, I've trained myself to only need 6 hours of sleep a night, but that isn't true. Studies show that people who are chronically underslept are way off of where they would normally be. You really suffer for it. Your mood, your energy level, your immune function is depressed. They even think it contributes to weight gain. People really need to figure out how to turn off the light. And I agree, for me and for many people, the end of the day is the fun time of the day. And it's hard to stop reading in the middle of a chapter, or to get off the phone, or to stop trying to get a million things done. But it's really, really important to get enough sleep. And in the same vein with your body, it's very important to get some exercise. You do not need to train for the marathon. You do not need to take an hour spin class. Even something like a 10 or 20-minute walk is so helpful for lifting your mood, giving you an energy boost, helping you with your mental focus and alertness, especially if you're outside. If you have trouble sleeping, it helps you fall asleep faster and sleep more deeply. And the thing about it is these very, very basic elements can have a very dramatic effect on your happiness without you even realizing it. The second area I would suggest is a bit surprising to me, because when you look at the academic research of happiness, there's almost no discussion of this part of life. But if you look at popular culture, you see that people are obsessed with this part of life. And that is the influence of clutter. And what I found is that for me and for many people, outer order contributes to inner calm more than it should. Because I agree, in the context of a happy life, something like a crowded coat closet or a messy desk is trivial. And yet, I find for myself, and over people tell me, that there's something about getting control over your stuff that gives you this disproportionate boost of good cheer and energy. But clutter is insidious, so how do you fight it? Here are 2 resolutions that I try. One is the 1-minute rule. Anything I can do in less than a minute, I do without procrastinating. If I can tear open a letter, read it, and throw it away, if I can take the jar of peanut butter, put on the lid, put the jar back in the cabinet, shut the cabinet door, if I can read an email, look something up in a minute, and answer it, I do it. And along the same lines, every night before I go to bed, I do the 10-minute evening tidy up. I do not clean, but I put books on shelves, put clothes away, put magazines and newspapers in the recycling. And what these do is they just get that scum of clutter under control. Because I realized I would walk into my apartment or my office and I would just feel overwhelmed by a million tiny tasks, none of which was onerous, but which made me feel drained. And of the #1 resolution that people mention to me that they have tried and that has added to their happiness, and I'm not saying it's the most significant thing you can do, but it seems to be the most popular thing to do, is to make your bed. How many people here make their bed every morning? Yep. I mean, if you don't, try it, because there's something about it, starts your day with that little bit of control. Now, a very well established psychological principle of psychology is that we think often that we act because of the way we feel. But in fact, to a very great degree, we feel because of the way we act. So you're yelling and slamming doors, and you think you're doing that because you're angry. But in fact, what's happening is your brain is saying, wow, we're yelling and slamming doors. There must be a lot of anger happening here, and it inflames those angry feelings. So a way you can take advantage of this to almost an eerie degree is to act the way you wish you felt. So if I'm feeling shy and reserved, I act friendly. If I'm feeling very tired, I act energetic. If I'm feeling resentful, I act thoughtful. And it is almost uncanny the degree to which you can change your emotional state. And so there's ways that you can work this into your day. So for example, to make my morning more cheerful, I sing in the morning. And singing makes you feel lighthearted and calm, and by acting that way, I feel that way. Or one of my very, very, very favorite resolutions with my family is to kiss more and hug more. Every morning and every night, every time somebody comes or goes, any chance I can get, I'm kissing and hugging. And I always did it to some degree, but now I make a much more concerted effort to do it. And the fact is, you feel more loving when you act in a very outwardly loving way. And then, of course, they feel more beloved. And that's a very satisfying resolution for the atmosphere of your house. And if you need a quick emergency mood boost and energy boost, an extremely quick, efficient way to do it is just to jump. You just jump up and down. And there's some, you know, it's childlike, it's playful, it's goofy, and it's energetic. And as adults, we don't get our feet up off the ground very often. And so you just jump up and down a few times. You give yourself that lift. And so the last resolution I want to throw out for your consideration is a more transcendent resolution. Because I think one of the things that can make us unhappy is the feeling that we don't have a way to bring our transcendent values into our everyday life. But in the chaos of everyday life, it can be hard sometimes to figure out a way to do that. And I really love this final resolution for that. And that is the resolution to imitate a spiritual master. And this resolution, you have to go through a couple stages. And the first is to identify a spiritual master. There are many great candidates to be spiritual masters, whether it's a great figure from history or someone alive today, someone even in your own circle of acquaintance. It could even be a fictional character. So who would you choose to be your spiritual master? Well, that's going to tell you something about yourself. And self-knowledge is one of the key things to happiness. So you've chosen somebody. Why have you chosen them? And then to say to yourself, well, what does my spiritual master embody? What are the values that this spiritual master teaches? So then you have to study, whether it's reading books, books they've written, biographies, memoirs, watching documentaries, watching television shows, whatever it can be, interviewing them if you know them, how to learn what are the teachings of your spiritual master. And then the final thing is to figure out, well, how would you bring the values embodied by your spiritual master into your own life? Because for most of us, the circumstances of our spiritual master would be very different from the circumstances in which we find ourselves. So for instance, my spiritual master, somewhat surprisingly to me, is Saint Therese of Lisieux. And I am not Catholic. I had never heard of Saint Therese, though it turns out she's like super famous saint. She's a doctor of the church, so she actually is a super saint. But I read her memoir, Story of a Soul, and I immediately thought, when I read Saint Therese, I understand myself. And what she is talking about in her life is what I want to learn for my life. Even though Saint Therese, she was French, she died in 1874 of tuberculosis at the age of 24, after having spent almost a third of her life in a cloistered convent with 20-something other nuns. So on the surface, Saint Therese and I have nothing in common. And yet it's when I read about Saint Therese and study Saint Therese that I feel that I learn the most about myself and my own values. So the last thing I would say is, having done a project like the Happiness Project myself, I truly do believe that just about anyone can benefit from it. Because this exercise to think about your own nature and your own interests and your own values and how to bring those values into your ordinary life is something that's going to make you happier. It made me happier. So thank you very much.